Hello and welcome. This is a short video on a problem that I ran across. I was in the need of using some telescoping gauges, and I needed one that was over 3 inches long. And my starrettes only go up to the 2 1/8 or so. And I had a set of the Chinese gauges, and they're out of the package, but they're basically this set. You see them on eBay or in Enco Travers, and they typically cost $15 to $20. And the problem I found with them is that they stick on you. So I was using it and it was sticking on me, and I was trying to figure out why. So I figured, okay, take it apart and then try and see, is it just because it's a piece of junk, or is it something silly that if I just tweak it, it would work better. So what I did is I took it off, and really there's a few parts of this. There's this rod that goes into a plunger. There's the handle itself. Then inside here there is a little plunger with a spring, and that plunger is what holds these rods in place. And inside here is a long spring with a little pin. And as soon as I took it apart, I realized what the problem was. The plunger that is for this is like a 1/16 of an inch. So it's fairly sharp. And what it hits is this part right here. And what this part here has in it is a few holes starting. So what's happening is this plunger, because it's a sharp edge, when you tighten up again, hits against this metal that's thin, that's in this groove, and starts making a hole. So that's a problem. That was what I figured was the problem. So I drew up what I think was the replacement plan. So the original pin was 1/675 wide. There was a 1/4 inch raised area, and that's where the spring lines up against. And then there's the pin, which was 0.056, roughly a 1/16 of an inch. And overall it was about 5/8 inch long. So what I did is I made the exact same length of a plunger, but I made the cap 0.0805, which was the largest diameter I could comfortably fit in the groove. And the groove I'm speaking about is in this port here. So there's a groove that the plunger slides against and pushes against the slot. So, and the the D, E, and F parts of this set all take the exact same tool. And what I did also is I took apart the 6-inch plunger, and I found I must have used it once, because what I had found out is that it also has a hole starting. Sorry, I'll zoom in. That's a hole that's starting. And I took out the plunger, and the plunger was physically bent. So I must have used it once, it pushed up, and must be very soft metal. So what I did is I decided to make a plunger, and I'll make more. I'll make 3 of them, or 2 more for each of these tools, because I would like to have the larger sizes. And what I did is I made it a little thicker on the top. I also made it a little thicker on the bottom, because when the spring goes on it, and what you have to just make sure of is, if you make your own, is that the plunger has to be thin enough to fit in the slot. So I made it thin enough to fit in the slot and make it fairly easy to be able to capture it. And this portion here has to fit through the slot here. I mean, these are by no means as smooth as the Starrettes or the Mitutoyos, but if you, for $20, especially if you needed a beater set that you didn't care if it got a little messed up on something. One other thing that, if as you're putting it back together, well, as I was putting back together, one of the other things I realized is that this groove here is kind of rough. So what would be a good idea, and I did it on another one, is if you just run a small file through both ends of this where the pins rub, it kind of gives you a better surface, and it really makes the snap gauge really smooth. So here's a snap gauge release. I don't know if you can hear that, but when you push these together, it's pretty rough. So this is not by any means perfect, but it is much smoother than what it was. And just as a matter, it takes it 2 seconds to run a file through that slot, and that just will make it go a little smoother when it rubs against the metal. I used the steel I used for this was 1144. I imagine brass would have worked just fine, although it's a little softer, and but I think brass would work just fine. 1/4 inch brass rod, and if you had stainless steel, I imagine stainless steel would also work fine. But I used 1144 steel rod.